It is another fake spring day. It's not even mid-March, but it's warm, it's sunny, it's beautiful, and life is good in the greenhouse. And in fact, I'd say there's no vacancy other than a few one-off spots here and there, but no ideal spaces at this point. And I did an inventory this week, and I'm over 2,600 seedlings between tomatoes, peppers, and I still have to pot up some herbs. But they're very happy, things are good. But I did want to show you one thing, one mistake, one little mess up I did. It's not fatal at all, but these are basil seedlings. And you may note some of the really pale outer leaves here. Those were the seed leaves. They are the cotyledons. The true leaves are the little brighter green ones right here. But the difference is that they're sun scalded. The pale leaves here, because I brought them outside from inside last week as I was potting up some other ones and just left them on a table, totally forgetting about hardening off. And what happens is when you expose seedlings that have been growing only under artificial light and suddenly subject them to outdoor sunlight, which is at least 10 times more powerful, well, that's okay if you do it for like 15 minutes or so the first day, but you just can't leave them out the whole day on the first day, because that's just what's called overexposure, and you get this. Now, it's not fatal. And fortunately, it was just the seed leaves that were affected, not the true leaves, the little brighter green ones. So everything's going to be fine here, but it is still preferable to not allow this to happen. So the takeaway on this is to slowly subject your seedlings to full sunlight over time, not over one day, to avoid the sun scald, because that will set your plants back from maturing. A little bit, maybe a couple weeks or so. In this case, not so much, because again, it was just on the seed leaves, not the true leaves. So no major damage here, but I wanted to point that out for you. Okay, so obviously the growth is going really well. All the seedlings are coming up. These were potted up 10 days ago from small seedlings, and then that short time, this is pineapple variety of tomato. It's beautiful right now. I mean, this is totally sellable. I would be really happy offering this to our community as a full price plant at $7, but it's got a good thick stem, really nice leaf coloration, probably very nice roots. I know I've got nice roots in there. Look at them coming out the bottom, and that's really important to note, that these seedlings are responding very well to the soil mix. And so that's what I wanted to talk to you about after I mention one other thing, and that is, again, controlling the growth rate of these plants before opening day or frost-free day for us here around April 1st, which is it's about 3 weeks away. 3 more weeks from now, these plants are going to be massive if I don't take corrective action. I talked about this in the prior video to this one today, but something else that I'm doing that I didn't talk about last week is that in the greenhouse, I am opening up the doors at sunrise to allow the greenhouse temperature to actually drop and get a kind of a jolt of cold temperature. Now, according to some scientific studies under a principle called DIF, it prevents elongation of the stem between the leaf nodes. So that slows down the growth. It's another way of saying it slows down the growth, along with reducing the watering. So again, we talked about that before, but today the main thing I want to talk to you about is what soil mix I'm using when I bump up these plants into these larger pots from just the pots they were in when I was starting them as seeds. Do I change the mix when I pot them up to something bigger, or do I use the same thing, or what do I do? That's a question I get a lot. So I thought I would just walk you through that process today and show you exactly what I use and how I do it. So let me clear away this space and we'll pick up there and I'll show you that exactly. I'm set up and ready to show you my process at this point for potting them up, bumping them up after about 4 weeks of growth from seed starting. And that's exactly where we are. Coincidentally, this is a 72 cell soil block tray, and it's Cherokee Purple, one of my favorite of all tomatoes, and certainly one bestseller. And they look great, and ironically or not, they are 4 weeks old. So it's the perfect time, and they are of great size to pot up. Now they could be smaller, that's fine, but they're right where I want them to be, thankfully. And so what my option would be at this point is just to use more of the same soil mix that I used, or the seed starting mix that I used when I sowed my seeds. This is ProMix BX, and it's really, the majority of this is peat moss with some wood fines in there, maybe 25%, some perlite, that's the white little things like popcorn that you see right here, but that's just a natural heat expanded material that helps with drainage and airflow. So that's good, but there isn't really any nutrients in here. Now, in the first 4 weeks, from seed starting until about 4 weeks into their life, the embryo provides really everything that they need. So there's no necessity to add any nutrients, in my opinion. And they can even go the additional 4 weeks as they're ready to get planted into the ground without any nutrients. And there's many times where I don't add anything at all. But over the years, I've decided that I really like the idea at the 4-week bump up stage to improve the soil with some slow release organic ingredients. So what do I use for that? Well, if I'm using a fertilizer because I want to maybe boost the root growth, I'm looking for something with a higher middle number, which is the phosphorus. Or if I want to boost the top growth for some reason, probably a little later into the 4-week period or after the initial bump up, I'd use something with a higher first number for nitrogen. But in my case, I find that really the best thing is just to add a nice amount of compost into the original soil mix, which improves the environment for the soil and the roots and the plants to really thrive. So that's what I'm after. And I have found this using high quality compost, whether you make it yourself or you have a great source that you can access wherever you live. This is Soil Cubed Veggie Mix, and this is available in the Southeast, but probably not. If you're not in the Southeast, you're probably going to have to source something else. But find some high quality compost if you don't make it yourself. And then I recommend adding it into your seed starting mix if that's what you're using, whether it's Pro Mix or something like that. It's very fine and sterile. It could be coconut coir also, but about 1 part of the compost to 4 parts of the seed starting mix. So I haven't blended it yet, but that's what I'm about to do right now. So that is 8 parts of the seed starting mix. So I'll put 2 parts of the compost and I'll just blend it all together. And that's really all you need. A little bit goes a long way, and I really don't want too much of the compost in there at this point. Eventually I can plant straight into it, but at this 4-week bump up stage, just a little bit is just right. And that's the ratio that I have found that works really well for me. Okay, so now that's all blended. Let's go ahead and pot some of this up. And by the way, just the texture of the compost also improves the root growing environment. It adds a little bit of difference or some diversity into the soil mix. There's just the peat and the perlite, and there's the compost. And when you blend that together, you have better diversity. And I like that. That's kind of training the plants to get ready for what's to come once they get potted into wherever they are living outside in the raised beds or in ground or whatever it is. So this is the midpoint. But now I can go ahead and take my pot and get it about to that point. In this case, because these are soil blocks, and I'm going to plant them pretty deep. These are tomatoes, and you know you can plant tomatoes very deep. So I overfilled. I'm going to dump some of that out, put that in. See how deep that is? But that's fine. They're right up to the true leaves, and I'll cover this up with that blended soil. And then I'll water that in. And I'm just going to repeat that 18 times 4, because there's 72 of those in there. And that's the process. Mainly though, it's the difference in the soil at the bump up stage. And for me, it's adding some high quality compost. And again, for here in the Southeast, it's Soil Cube, but wherever you can source that, that's what I recommend that you do.